Hi, I'm Sean Scott. I'm a sales rep for Spark Parts. I'm also the team captain of the Smart Corps. We've won the SPPL 2 years in a row now. A lot of people are concerned about using CO2 in electro-pneumatic guns, but if set up just right, it'll work great on the Vibin SP-1. The trick is understanding how CO2 works. If you look here, CO2 is a liquid that is inside of our tanks. Liquid is more dense than a gas, which is a good thing. You can get a lot more shots out of it. The downside is if you introduce this liquid into your paintball gun, it can cause the pressure to rise rapidly as it boils off into a gas. Both the Vibin and the SP-1 have the new max flow R vertical regulator. The R means it's got a built-in relief valve. If liquid CO2 does get into the marker, the relief valve vents off the high pressure gas to help prevent damages from the internals. So now I'm going to demonstrate how the relief valve works on the new vertical max flows that come on the Vibs and SP-1s. First I'm going to shoot the gun down so liquid CO2 is introduced to the system here. You can hear it choking up there. If you give it a second, it'll actually vent off the bottom. You can hear that right there. That's the relief valve doing its job. What that's doing is that once liquid is up in the system up here, once it expands to a gas and reaches a pressure about 205 psi, it'll actually vent off the bottom. That's how it works. Protection from damage is only part of the battle. If you want the best performance on CO2 out of your Vibin SP-1, you need to have the proper setup. Gravity will always hold the liquid CO2 towards the bottom of the tank. The Vibin and the SP-1 both come with a angle adapter, a little wedge right here. What that does helps keep the tank tilted back, which helps prevent liquid CO2 from entering the valve. Sometimes you're running, shooting downhill, sometimes liquid can enter the gun. Don't worry, it's not going to harm anything, but it may make the gun cycle a little erratically. If that happens, just tilt the gun back up, let the CO2 settle towards the back of the tank, and let the relief valve on the regulator do its job. Once you hear the venting come out of the regulator, you'll be back in business. For even better protection from liquid CO2 entering your gun, you want to get what's called an anti-siphon tube. What an anti-siphon tube does is basically like a snorkel. It pulls the gas from above the line of the liquid. And for best performance, you want to make sure to keep the tank completely horizontal to the gun, which means you're going to have to remove the wedge as we've done here. Now you're going to want to have this anti-siphon installed by a professional at your local pro shop. Once they do that, they're going to put a little indicator on it. The indicator, basically to line it up, screw in your tank all the way till it's flush and then back it off until the indicator is located at the top. Another great way to help prevent liquid CO2 from entering your gun is go with what's called a remote line. We have one set up here. You want it set up in a vertical orientation in your pack. Basically, as you can see, it's just going to take the gas right off the top and you're not going to have any liquid get in at all. When using a remote line, you want to make sure to stay away from anti-siphon tanks because it can act as a siphon which can draw the liquid straight into the gun. If you plan on using CO2 with the Vibin SP-1, there's one more thing I'd like to mention. Liquid CO2, in order for it to be used properly, has to expand to a gas. The way it does that is by absorbing heat. It absorbs heat from the gas that's already inside there or from the tank itself. A lot of things that, one of the things that people do is put on neoprene tank covers. It doesn't actually keep the tank warm, it actually blocks the heat from being transferred to the tank. It's kind of like using a koozie with your favorite canned beverage. It helps keep it cool, so you want to make sure to stay away from neoprene tank covers. The last thing I want to cover is how to get the best performance out of your Vibin SP-1. Now there's something called dwell. Dwell is how long your electronic solenoid stays open for to actually fire the paintball. Now CO2 and compressed air expand at different rates, so they need different dwell settings. From the factory, they're set up for CO2. If you want to change the settings, it's very simple. The first thing you need to do is remove the two screws that hold the grip on, take the grip off, disconnect your battery, and then hold down the power button and connect the battery back up. Once you do that, you'll see that it'll blink once or twice. If it blinks once, you're in CO2 mode. If it blinks twice, you're in compressed air mode. If you want to change it again, just unplug the battery and repeat the process again.